Hello everyone! Today we will continue to go through the Microsoft AZ204 question bank. Next, let's look at question 16. Question 16 is about web applications. For this external application, during periods of high traffic, the page load time increases. We hope to achieve automatic scaling when the CPU load exceeds 80%, and at the same time, we want to minimize costs. So what should we do in this situation? First of all, here, our first tier, there's a key point here regarding the first tier. The first tier uses a shared infrastructure and is either free or low cost, but it does not support auto-scaling. This is something you must pay attention to. It does not support auto-scaling. For auto-scaling, you need the standard or higher tier. So this tier actually does not support auto-scaling, which means option A can be eliminated right away. As for option B, it refers to switching to a higher tier app service plan. Now, regarding the higher tier app service plan, its cost is relatively high. It does support auto-scaling, but the cost is higher. For this question, the goal is to minimize costs. So the correct answer is actually option C. Switch to the standard app service plan. Both the standard and premium tiers support auto-scaling, but the standard tier is more affordable. The last option is to switch to the app service consumption plan, which charges based on execution. However, what does it require? It requires refactoring the code. The changes involved are actually quite significant. The modifications are quite extensive. So that's the situation for question 16. So please pay attention to this point. For auto-scaling, you first need to upgrade to a tier that supports this feature. The standard tier is the lowest available option. It has the lowest cost among the supported tiers. That's why we choose option C, the standard tier. All right, next let's look at question 17. In practice, this question is about a subscription that includes a workspace. Within the company, there are 100 on-premises servers, and the main systems are related to Windows Server 2012, R2, and 2016, which have already been connected to this workspace. The workspace is configured to collect security-related performance counters from these servers. We need to configure alerts based on the collected data to meet the following requirements. First, the alert rules must support dimensions. Second, the time to create an alert needs to be minimized. Third, a single notification should be sent when the alert is triggered and resolved. These are the requirements for this question. First, option A is about the activity log signal type. Here, the activity log, and let's also talk about option D together. Option A, the activity log, and option D, the audit log, are both used to track operational events which are not suitable for our performance counters. What about option B? That's the application log. The application log requires complex queries, so it does not meet the requirement for quick creation. And what about option C, our indicators? As for metrics, our performance counters fall under what category? They are time series metric signals, which makes them the best match. That covers the basic situation for this question, question 17. Here, what you mainly need to pay attention to are the requirements, which mainly include what? They include support for metrics only. Metric alerts support multidimensional analysis, and for quick creation, metric alerts are processed in real time and have built-in triggers. Plus, they have a built-in notification logic for handling alerts. So for this question, choosing the metric signal type is the correct answer. This is the content for question 17. Question 18 is about the following. Developing an application. What is it for? It's for querying independent vacation accommodation providers. Here, we need to use our system to do this. How do we search? We need to implement multi-criteria search and also support users in using regular expressions to search index documents. So how should we configure this? First of all, the configuration is as follows. The configuration classes are all the same, right? The configuration classes are the same, so we mainly look at the properties that follow. Among the properties, first is property A. This one controls logic. It has nothing to do with our syntax. Option C, it's used for classification and statistics, not for search functionality. This is for classification and statistics. Option D is for filtering results, but it does not support regular expressions. So what about option B in this question? After all, when we set it to the for state here, what can we enable? We can enable syntax that supports regular expressions. In fact, by default, it actually does as well. That doesn't work either. By default, it actually doesn't work. However, as long as you enable its full syntax once the full syntax is enabled, then it works. At that point, it can support regular expressions. By default, it uses a simple syntax. And with the simple syntax, this is not supported, so everyone should be aware of that. In fact, regarding this transformation here, by default, it also doesn't support regular expressions. You need to enable something, enable this feature. Only after enabling the full syntax can it be supported. This is essentially an advanced feature of this syntax. Regular expressions are actually considered an advanced feature, and they need to be explicitly enabled. You have to specify the query type for it to work, so for question 18, we should choose option B. At first glance, this question seems like none of the options are supported. But actually, option B is an advanced complete syntax that is supported. That's the key point here. This is the situation for question 18. Next, let's look at question 19. For question 19, first, the background is that we are developers at a company who need to update the definition of an existing logic app. Which tool should we use? Alright, first of all, let's clarify what updating the definition means. It refers to modifying the structure of the logic app, such as its triggers, actions, parameters, and so on. Now, let's look at the options. Option A, Enterprise Integration Pack. This is used for integration accounts and is not related to modifying the definition. Next, let's look at option C. Option C is API connections. APIs are used for managing authentication for connections, not for editing definitions. What about option D? Our Logic App Designer is suitable for visual editing. However, for more complex modifications, you might need code support. So this option somewhat fits, but it doesn't fully meet the requirements. Finally, option B, the code view in Logic Apps, allows you to directly edit the underlying code. It's suitable for making precise adjustments to the definition. So option D actually allows for simple modifications. In this case, both options option D for simple changes, but for more complex ones, it's not particularly well supported. Option B, on the other hand, does support precise adjustments to the definition. Therefore, if this were a multiple choice question, option D could still be selected. It would be a valid choice. But since this is a single choice question, we can only pick the most appropriate answer. So when you're working on this type of question, for single choice questions, you just need to choose the most suitable option. In the case of multiple choice questions, as long as the option meets the requirements, you can select it. That's the situation here. The key point of this question actually lies in the fact that the code view is the most efficient way to directly modify definitions, especially when it comes to updating existing logics. It's the most convenient. That's our question 19. Alright, next let's take a look at question 20. For question 20, once again, we're developing a public-facing API solution, and the backend is hosted on Microsoft's app service. We've already implemented our RESTful service. We need to configure authentication for the backend of the API management service instance. So what is the solution here? It's to configure basic gateway credentials for our resources. Now, does this meet the requirements? First of all, we need to know that our backend authentication requirement is for API management to verify the permission to call the backend service. The problem with basic gateway credentials is that basic authentication, meaning username and password, is transmitted in plain text, which is not secure and therefore not suitable for our production environment. So what is actually the correct approach? We should use client certificates or some other encryption methods to perform authentication. Therefore, the basic gateway credentials mentioned in this question are actually just the most basic configuration and are not secure. The final conclusion is that while basic credentials can achieve authentication, they do not comply with security best practices. It does not meet the security requirements, so it does not fulfill the requirements. But actually, if this were a multiple choice question, it could be selected because it does work, but it is not the best security practice. So for this question, what do we choose? We choose option B, right? This is the situation for our 20th lesson. Everyone should pay attention. If a single choice question appears, remember that although it is supported, it is not secure. Alright? Okay, if you need the complete question bank, you can leave a comment below and get the most reliable question bank at the best price. We'll stop here for now. Goodbye, everyone.